JAX is trans! Okay, well, let me explain myself. Whether you think JAX is gender queer, gender fluid, or just straight up trans femme, I will be going over in this video the evidence as to why I think JAX is trans, and at the time of filming this, Goose did confirm that JAX is trans, but there are still some people who don't believe that and say that the foreshadowing was never there. So that is why I'm making this video, to show you that JAX has always been trans from the very start. In order to avoid any confusion, as Goose did say that any pronouns for JAX are fine, I will be using he, him for JAX throughout this video since I talk both about him and Gooseworx and I don't want people to get confused. I do use she, her, like on the outside. Now, the transgender symbolisms in the show are very much a show not tell kind of way, which I really like personally. Like, I don't think every show needs to just outright tell you that this character is XYZ, because the signs are always there. JAX's story is a cautionary tale of basically what happens to someone when they push all of their friends away and have no support system and end up isolating themselves and living with that regret and guilt for their mistakes, and somebody who just was never able to accept them to themselves and come out. And personally, I think because of that JAX's ending was just perfect in every single way, because it's very realistic for somebody to go through similar aspects that JAX did and not have a happy ending. And I just think it was a perfect way to wrap up his story in a cute little bow. Pun intended. And as a disclaimer, this is not me trying to say like cis men cannot be feminine, because they can and they are, and I love that, but this is strictly about Goose's personal story about her being transgender and how she related that onto JAX. Now, before I get into my first point with Gooseworx basically confirming all of this before it was confirmed, I wrote the script again before she had literally tweeted that JAX was trans with this picture, so just keep that in mind as you watch this video. But again, I still want to make this video because some people just did not realize the amount of foreshadowing there was and said that it came out of nowhere. So I'm here to disprove that, because it did not come out of nowhere if you are media literate. So if this topic is something that you're passionate about, then sit back, relax, grab your JAX merch, and enjoy the video. Before I get into all the evidence within the show itself, I want to start this off with Gooseworx herself. In the past, we have seen Goose say that JAX is her self-insert character and has said she relates to him the most. Now, if you ask me, that's all the canon implication right there, since, you know, she's a trans girl herself, but I digress. JAX as a character feels like he is an exploration of how Goose could have ended up had she never transitioned. Now, we know Goose has already confirmed his trans identity by the time I wrote this, but just in case you're not convinced, let me share a few things with you from her Tumblr. Someone tweeted wondering why JAX was reacting so negatively to being in the maid dress, and Goose says verbatim, he wasn't ready to ask these questions about himself. And another similar ask on Tumblr about why he always bullies the girls, to which she then states, he has issues he hasn't worked out with himself yet. I'll be talking more about this topic later in the video. She also has gotten another few asks where she responds, JAX likes a lot of things he wouldn't admit, and what does JAX like that he won't admit? He won't let me tell you. This is adamant when we see him feeling himself in the maid dress during one of his intrusive thought sequences in episode 9, and him blushing when he wears Ribbit's bow on his ear. JAX was feeling comfortable enough with the maid dress outfit to the point where one of the alter egos in his head wears it, quote, as a bit to show he doesn't really care or as a joke, which is something that very often happens with trans women who either deny or don't realize their transness yet, which often leads to the femboy phase, but that's not a topic we'll be addressing much. Within that same scene, he was also projecting this gayness on people who question it, like when he called one of his other selves the F-slur. I'll be addressing a lot more about the maid dress later in the video since there's so much more to say about it, but back to the topic at hand. Some other honorable mention posts of hers are, who is the most girly pop in TADC? To which she responds with just, heh, the infamous Tumblr sexy man post, and this one where she said that JAX had an obsession with Ariel as a kid, and The Little Mermaid is known as a trans-allegatory film to some viewers. There was also a reply to someone's sister being disgusted with JAX cross-dressing, and Goose replied with, boy is she in for a surprise. And she also vaguely tweets about how you can explicitly set up certain things in a show through clues and symbolism, and people will still deny the obvious. All these things are heavily implying, or more likely straight up saying, that yes, JAX is indeed trans, and JAX being trans was always intended from the start. On a sadder note, Goose has tweeted a while ago that she had been through conversion therapy in the past, which is really heartbreaking. This makes that one scene in episode 8 of Kane literally shocking Jax all the more sad. My guess is that this was something that she may have experienced, or at the very least has been threatened with, but take this with a grain of salt though, as I have no knowledge on conversion therapy and what that entails. And before she confirmed it, Goose has also liked a trans Jax theory on Tumblr, has drawn Jax in a feminine way various times, as we see in this Halloween art, early concept art, and this one of him talking about taking estrogen and him going through period cramps, though that may just be because torturing him is funny. But not only that, she has also reposted art of Jax inside an egg, which is super significant, which now brings us to my next point, the egg cracking metaphor. For those of you who are unaware, in the transgender community, an egg is a metaphor for a person who is trans but hasn't realized it or accepted it yet, also known as being deep in denial, like in Jax's case. Cracking refers to the moment of profound self-realization when that metaphorical shell breaks and they begin to accept their true gender identity. If you've ever heard someone say something along the lines of, "I used to identify as something else, but then my egg cracked," that means they are telling you that they've realized that they're trans.
Just a misunderstood little chicken fetus in an egg that needs to be cracked open.
This was a very deliberate metaphor Goose decided to use. If she, a trans woman, didn't intend for Jax to be trans, then there was no reason for her to use such a metaphor for this scene. There are plenty of other ones she easily could have used here. The fact of the matter is, Jax is trans, and she's explaining this in a show-not-tell kind of way. And this isn't the only time an egg is mentioned or even prominent in the show. At the end credits of the final episode, there's paintings of an egg with a question mark in the middle. We also see in episode 5 a book on the bookshelf behind Jax here titled with just egg. Along with eggs, there is another subtle trans metaphor that was thrown in, but this time on the episode 9 poster. There are butterflies next to the pink lamp we see Jax standing next to later in the episode. A transgender butterfly symbol exists, which looks like this. And, similar to the egg one, butterflies are another thing that the trans community often uses as a metaphor, and this is due to the metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Butterflies symbolize gender transition and transgender identity. All this being said, I think we actually do see Jax's egg cracked at the end, but by then it's too late and Jax is already too far gone. The song choice of Isn't She Lovely was intentional. We see it being played alongside a montage of Jax scenes. While many argue this could be because it's Jax's demise and they wanted to twist the emotional knife, I don't think that's the case, or at least not the only reason. And again, that's because of the song being played. Isn't She Lovely is a song about the birth of Stevie Wonder's daughter. It feels like we, the viewers, and also maybe Pomni in the scene, are seeing the birth of the true Jax. The Jax who is a trans woman. And yes, she is so lovely. The implications have always been there. I cannot stress enough that just because something isn't outright stated, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist or it isn't canon. That's essentially what implied, at least in this context, means. Goose wouldn't throw all of this subtlety in there for no reason. If not implied to be canon, then what else could implied mean? My next point is Jax's misogyny and the way he bullies women in the show. Since episode 1, we've known Jax to be misogynistic. We see this especially with Gangle, but like we're shown in several times throughout the series, in that one Tumblr ask, he's like this towards all the girls. He even preaches about no girls being allowed in his mindscape, and the fact that his real self is locked behind a door that could very well be a metaphor for a closet, hello? And the fact that they yell shut up at that door right after saying no girls allowed is just crazy amounts of symbolism to me. Many argue that could also be Pomni's abstraction door, which I can also see that take, but considering what we know, I really think it's just the true femme Jax in there. Now, the scene in episode 1 where he pushes down Gangle, I can see it as both ways. One, I see it as him being misogynistic with his internalized misogyny, but two, after rewatching it, knowing what we know now with him being trans in episode 9, I do think he was also just trying to go first because deep down he was like, yeah, I'm a girl, I can go first, but I don't want people to know that, so I'm gonna push down Gangle. This is like just me being kind of silly about it, but like it also makes sense for Jax's character to totally do that. Now, not to bring everything back to my favorite media of all time, Fruits Basket, but this is a very similar thing that happens with Akito Soma, and I just want to get this point across. She was also raised as a boy and had to be referred to one all of her life due to the abuse from her mother, similarly to Jax, even though the abuse was a bit different. Only a select few knew of Akito's real gender until the end of the show.
I really do despise women.
While Akito was cruel to every member of the family, she was especially harder on the women. She, like Jax, has internalized misogyny for being unable to embrace the truth of her own gender. When she comes to terms with herself and commits to changing her abusive tendencies, she no longer has that misogyny. While we don't see this exact conclusion for Jax, there are many examples of him being misogynistic in the show. This is both due to the mask that Jax puts on in order to avoid his real feelings and identity, and also the fact that he is unable to accept himself as a woman like they all can. There's a scene where he asks Pomni if Gangle is capable of being happy.
You think Gangle is actually capable of being happy? You think hanging out with Zooble is gonna magically fix that?
Maybe she just doesn't want to hang out with someone who's mean to her all the time.
And while at first glance it may not seem like anything huge, after seeing all this evidence, I have reason to believe that this question had a deeper meaning behind it. His behavior towards the girls boils down to his jealousy, just like how he feels envious of Zooble's gender identity as well, which now brings us to our next point. Jax is someone who desperately clings to this idea of being masculine and gets very uncomfortable when that belief is challenged. This is something that regularly happens throughout the show. To start, he's literally given a girly room against his will. We never see his reaction to this, but knowing what we know about Jax, we can only assume he had a similar response to his room that he did with the maid dress. Although we don't see much within his room, we do see examples of this in other ways, such as... He says that he's what peak male performance looks like, and states that his ears and tail are the pinnacle of masculinity. But then, Pomni points out that he doesn't have a tail and has never seen him with one. He's surprised to see himself without his tail and wonders how long he hasn't had it. Well, yes, he does have a tail the rest of the show after this episode. It's about the deeper meaning of this dialogue. He needs to believe he's masculine, because if not, what will he have then? He's not ready to accept the truth about himself yet, and he cannot handle it. He gets really angry when he's in the maid dress, and another time he says he wouldn't be caught dead wearing it. Zooble questions this, saying that they thought they'd be into this.
Seems fitting for you, though. I figured you'd be into this.
What does that mean? What's that supposed to mean?
I'm just having fun. I forgot you hate fun.
It means everyone can see it but you, Jax. I also think part of the reason Jax hates evil Jax as much as he does is because he is literally the embodiment of the vulnerable, nice Jax that he could be. And evil Jax says that he looks great in the dress that is currently making him feel extremely exposed. The maid dress puts him in a vulnerable situation of having to think about his gender, the very thing he doesn't want to face. And Zooble's entire existence in the circus is also a huge jab at Jax's internal issues, and I think that's also why they butt heads so often. Going back to Evil Jax for a quick second, not only does his compliment make him feel uncomfortable, but I think that Evil Jax is also somebody who has come to terms with his true self, and I've seen a popular headcanon that Evil Jax is female to male trans, rather than male to female trans like Jax is, but I mean, whatever you choose to headcanon, I think it's very clear that Evil Jax has very clearly figured out his gender issues. But back to Zooble. Jax tries to insult Zooble by reminding them that they're supposed to be unhappy with the ability to change their body around, since that was something Zooble had hated before.
Aren't you supposed to be miserable about your ability to choose your own body or something?
Once he sees that Zooble has come around to liking it, he grimaces. He wishes he could accept himself the same way that they did. We even see more of his jealousy towards them in episode 9. The whole point of Zooble's abstraction scenario in his head was to show that Jax envies Zooble. He was trying to replicate them in that scene. Even in the bar scene, he forcibly asks for the egg white to be taken out of his drink because he's vegan, something Zooble had caused. Another subtle reference that Zooble makes Jax feel like he can't ever live as himself because he can never be like Zooble. Zooble is openly trans and has people that they can be vulnerable around. Jax doesn't have any of that. Well, you know, he does, but he doesn't think he does. And when he did, it was with Ribbit. She puts her bow atop his ear after telling her about his mom, and he blushes. Ribbit then says, "Your secret is safe with me." The bow calms him down from becoming self-destructive before Kaufmo knocks and snaps him out of that vulnerable state, and then he had to ruin it, yada yada. Zooble is who Jax could have been had he not self-sabotaged. His whole torture sequence in episode 8 is very apparent that he fears being laughed at and hated by his friends after being vulnerable and embracing his true self and having it held up above his head and having it used against him like his mother probably did. And I think that Jax being peeled by them shortly after is metaphorical to his fears. He tries to keep hiding himself even after he's fully exposed, which is just so sad to me. Speaking of his mom, that whole monologue is also very transquitted to me. He tells her something personal, then his mother berates him, makes him feel so small to the point that her hugging him causes a panic inside him, and then he pushes her off him. This sounds like a very common coming out to your parents scenario that real trans people go through, especially if a parent is as mentally unstable and narcissistic like Jax's mom. Also, the way Jax's voice breaks when he was saying, "I was less of a man than him" during that whole sequence. Yeah. If you get it, you get it. My final point has to do with the famous trans allegatory movie, I Saw the TV Glow, which I had just watched recently before this episode came out, and I'm really glad I did because now rewatching the series and even watching episode 9, I caught so many references to this movie. Let's talk about them. I Saw the TV Glow is famously a psychological horror movie about a surreal allegatory for gender dysphoria and the transgender experience. The film explores the terrifying, isolating, and often joyful process of cracking your egg and realizing who you truly are. There are a bunch of subtle references to this in the Amazing Digital Circus in regards to Jax. The pink lamppost in episode 9 looks a lot like this scene in the movie with Owen in the dress next to Maddie, and also, pink is a color that is used and referenced a lot in the movie. Not only that, but there are a plethora of moments where Jax stares uncomfortably at a TV screen, much like Owen in the movie. Owen's character, like Jax, never comes to terms with his gender identity. The ending of the movie is very heartbreaking. He is miserable and shuffles through an unfulfilling life. It signifies the tragic cost of repressing your true self while leaving a final, urgent message to the audience that there is still time to break free and live authentically. This brings me to Pomni saying to Jax,
"You should have just talked to me, man."
After Jax says, "I don't want to go." Her saying that was the equivalent to Maddie telling Owen that there's still time. But neither Owen nor Jax ever took that advice. Jax never opened up to anyone or reached out to Pomni until it was too late, and even when he tried to before that, he ultimately said never mind. Although he may have accepted himself truly in the end, it was as he was abstracting and therefore his time still ran out. And for Owen at the end of the film, while he doesn't die, he goes back to his empty, people-pleasing life, apologizing to everyone around him frantically, never coming to terms with his true self. I am unaware of if Goose had this movie in mind when she was creating the show, but in a way, I think that makes these similarities even better. She unknowingly referenced a beloved movie depicting the transgender experience so many times with her transcoded character, furthering the implication that Jax is transgender, and I think that's beautiful. In conclusion, Jax is a transgender woman, but Goose herself said that any pronouns you may choose to use for Jax are fine. So what I say to that is, he, she, Jax, realness! And with that, this video comes to an end. If you liked this video, please subscribe. Now, there are so many points regarding this topic that I might have missed, but I did my best to fit all of them in this video, so please feel free to add anything I didn't cover in the comments. And let me know what you guys think of this in the comments, or whether or not you had a different headcanon for Jax, or if you guys picked up on this or not, let me know. And if there's anything else you'd like me to make video essays on, definitely feel free to share because I love making video essays on characters and series that I absolutely adore. If you like Fruits Basket, like I mentioned in this video, I did make one for Kyo, so definitely be sure to check that out if that's your cup of tea. But yeah, besides that, thank you guys for watching and listening to my rambles, and I hope that Jax being trans means something personal to you out there if you are also in the transgender community. I may not be trans, but Jax as a character means so much to me on other personal deep ways, and I love her so freaking much, and I wanted to do her justice with this video and just tell her story because her transgender story deserves to be told just like everyone else's. Okay guys, thank you for listening. Bye bye.